everyone. This is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and happy Sunday, February 8th of 2026. I hope you have had a wonderful first week in February. We have some beautiful, unseasonably warm weather here in Utah, and I have been outside enjoying it like many people here. It's just so beautiful. The weather is so nice. And of course, we're looking for snow. There's all kinds of reasons for snow to be happening here in Utah, besides all of the drinking water we depend on, but all of the ski resorts and all of the people who depend on having snow for a living. So it's just been a really amazing warm season that I have been enjoying to the fullest. So I know that the East Coast seems to be hitting hard with lots of snow and hard weather and very, very cold. So it's an interesting time to be alive, and with the energy shifting around the planet. And I think being aware of what is happening on a higher level, or just on a different level, gives you a completely different perspective. So as I went into my journaling this week, coming out of last week's just beautiful being on a quiet timeline, it's interesting because even though, I got a lot of really amazing comments from people, and I thank you for that. Some really nice emails responding to the newsletter, the email that accompanies this video. So if you're not on my email list, jump over to Barlow Herbal, and I always drop an email that I kind of just share my thoughts on the topic that I'm covering that week, and there's a link to the video. So go ahead and sign up over there, and you'll kind of get a little bit more insight onto some of the things that I'm talking about. And my real hope is that you leave whatever you listen or watch or read from me, that you leave with some inspiration and motivation, because I really do believe that we live in the most beautiful time to be alive, but it can be a little rough with the energies that are happening. So last week, I really just had landed on this, what I like to call a quiet timeline. It doesn't mean that there's not hard things still happening. And I think that this is where being on a quiet timeline means that you can handle the hard things a little bit differently. And some of the things that I've discovered about myself, even this week, that, I'm not quite sure how to feel about it, to be honest. And what I mean is I have landed on this definitely quieter timeline. But what I find is that there's people that are in my life that I have just stayed private from. Like because this is the way that I operate. Even though, I come on here every week and I, share my thoughts and I share a lot of things. I am actually a super, super private person, and I tend to go through really hard, painful, emotional things internally and by myself. And there's been a couple of people who've gotten their feelings a tiny bit hurt when it was never about that. But I just find myself in such an interesting place because, all the things that I have been going through and the privacy that is so dear to me, it's making me question that, but I also am not questioning that. Anyway, I don't know if that makes any sense or if anyone that's listening to that can resonate, but to me, I think the most powerful healing and the most powerful insights come when we go inside and we go internal, and we're able to process it. And I find myself protecting my privacy and my feelings and my emotions so fiercely and intensely that it's that I just I have to be careful that I don't close myself off too much, and maybe that's the best way to put it. So I have some really cool journaling that came out of this from last week. The very first thing that I wrote down, because I saw this little video of this woman who works with water, and she looks at the molecules of water under a microscope once it's exposed to, beautiful energies, loving words and loving phrases, as compared to water that is exposed to harsh words and angry, cruel words. And this is not anything new. I think there's a beautiful book I read a long time ago called something like The Messages in Water. And it just talks about the power of words and energy and frequencies and how it affects things. And this one experiment that she did that I thought was so fascinating that I saw at the very beginning of this week, where she took an egg that was raised, pasture raised. It was loved. The chicken was loved, and it was raised without antibiotics and without hormones. And she looked at it underneath a microscope, and it was beautiful. The patterns that this egg produced on a very tiny level were beautiful. And then she got some eggs that were raised in these big factory farms. The chickens were crowded together. They didn't eat their proper diet. They didn't get sunshine. They didn't get, they didn't get love. They were constantly stressed. And what was interesting is that these eggs under the microscope were totally fractured, and the pattern was totally confused and messed up. And then what she did is she took this a step further. She took the one egg that was pasture raised and loved, the chicken, was taken care of, and she put it in the center, and then she surrounded this egg with like a dozen eggs of chickens from chickens that were not raised the same way. And over a certain period of time, I can't remember exactly what it was, all of the eggs around the one egg that was raised with love, or from the chicken with love, was they all changed. They all changed to beautiful patterns. So what I wrote here is how one egg or person can affect all the other eggs or people around them. And then I wrote this: be the one high vibe egg. So I think the biggest thing that I got out of that little piece at the beginning of this week is that even though sometimes this world seems really dark and really heavy and really hard and really cruel and really sad and all the things, if we are the one person who can, as much as possible, stay vibrating in love and high frequency, then we are going to affect the other people around us. And we all know that this is true, but I think in these crazy times that we're in, people don't see it and they forget, because these energies can be so dense and so heavy. So that was just kind of the first thing, be the one high vibe egg. So then I kind of flowed off of my journaling from last week. So I wrote, okay, you've raised your vibe, you're on the quiet timeline. Now what? And I actually sat with that for a second, because I'm like, okay, I have this kind of need for now taking a little bit more massive action and more movement. So then I wrote, you want to do something that feels massive, but what? And you're in a good watcher observer place and you don't want to disturb it. And then I wrote, but this is what I'm feeling. I'm feeling the need to physically move energy a little more than I already do. I think when I am going through my work day, when I go out on my big walks every day, when I lift weights and all that stuff, I am physically, thank God that I do these things, because I don't know how human beings who feel the same energies that I do and are in the same place that I am, as far as just what you feel and what you see happening. I don't know how you just sit and just stay. Maybe that's a great place to be. I don't know. But for me, I'm feeling the need to move more energy, clear stuff out, maybe move furniture, just move energy for moving energy's sake. I just, that's what I'm really feeling. So then I said this, I feel finally still, but the stillness has a pressure in it. So I feel like there is pressure in this stillness that now I need to really move energy, stay in this quiet, still timeline, because it's so wonderful, but then I need to start moving energy. I'm not restless. I'm charged. Okay. So that's what it feels like. I'm not trying to escape. I'm in witness mode. So I'm observing. I'm in witness mode. So I'm not trying to escape anything. At this point, I think when you come full circle with the layers of awakening and awareness, and the layers you peel back, and all the work that you do, and the emotional healing, the trauma healing, the things that you release from your life, you're not trying to escape anymore. You're just in witness mode, and that's a huge difference. That's what I wrote. I don't need to go into the noise in order to move massive energy. That's probably the biggest message that dropped in for me this week, is I can start leveling up the energy that I feel called to move without jumping back into the noise, the political noise, the all the crap that's going on out in the world. I don't have to jump back into that to move energy. Now, if that is something you're called to do because you're wanting to make a difference, um, that's different. That's yeah, everyone. We get to do us. We get to do what we're called to do, right? So I don't need to go into the noise in order to move massive energy. That was really beautiful. So then I wrote this: it feels like my nervous system can finally handle the movement of energy no matter what that looks like or how big the movement is. And it's not loud or noisy. Instead of being reactive, now I can be intentional with the way that I move energy. Okay, so I wrote down a few things that just kind of was like, these are some ways that I can do it, and maybe this something will land and resonate with you too. Okay, so the goal is to move massive amounts of energy without breaking the stillness. So it sounds like, well, you can't do one without the other. No, I think that they can coexist together. Okay, so the biggest thing for me is physical exertion. This is the biggest thing for me personally. Um, Doing something physical that has no like narrative or any like productivity goal. Okay, so this is where I had the swap, because I always am really intentional about, I go on my walk. I think it's important to get movement like that every day for my physical fitness, for my circulation, for my mental health, for all the things. And then when I lift weights, it's the same thing. I'm doing it because I want to get stronger. I want my bones to be strong. I want to maintain this physical body while I'm in it, right? So then I thought, well, what if I just do movement for movement's sake? So here's what I wrote: do a weighted walk. So maybe every once in a while, bring some weights with me. Not like big old heavy weights, but maybe some 5 pounds and walk with them. Okay. Uh, Slow strength training instead of, so, and then I wrote heavy with fewer reps and lots of rest, because I go in with an intention. I have a certain routine that I like. I change it up a little bit here and there, but it's on purpose. So what made me think of this is my son Scott at work. What he's been doing the last probably month or so is he sets his timer for 30 minutes all throughout the workday, and when it goes off, he'll drop down and do 10 intentional push-ups, or he'll lift up these. He has 90-pound kettlebells. He's a very big, strong man, which is amazing to watch. And he'll do a farmer's carry. So a farmer's carry is you hold heavy weights and you walk a certain distance down and back. And so he'll grab his 90-pound kettlebells in each hand, and every 30 minutes during that particular day, he'll just do a farmer's carry with it. So that's what made me think of it. It's like, just do something, so I've been dropping down and doing 10 push-ups, just when my brain thinks about it, I grab something for my knees, because I usually do push-ups on my knees, and I'll do 10, 15, 20 push-ups randomly in the middle of my day. So I'm just moving energy for the sake of that. It's not like, here's the narrative I have to follow to keep my weight routine. And it's actually really cool. So, it's amazing to actually feel your body be able to change differently, because we are creatures of habit. No matter if they're good habits, we still need to change things up. Okay. And then I wrote, push something. I need to start pushing something. And that kind of dropped in when I was on one of my walks this week. And because the weather has been so beautiful here, what I did is I went into my garden boxes, which I compost. I take stuff from the house every few days, and I compost it into my garden boxes so that when the spring comes, they're all ready for me to plant. So there's no snow right now in the valley, hasn't been for a while. So I came home from one of my walks this week, and I went into a couple of my flower boxes, and with my bare hands, I just pushed the dirt around, and with the compost, and I felt the need to just push some dirt around. So that's what I did. Okay. And then I wrote actually here, what this will do is move energy through my body instead of into meaning. And it keeps me the watcher, the observer. It keeps me witnessing instead of just mindlessly doing what I normally do. To me, this is changing up the routine. Okay. So then the whole thing about clearing stuff out. I've talked about this before. This has been something that's been super, super important to me. as far as keeping my space clean and not letting stuff accumulate through my life as I get older. Because I think when we are in a place, I've been in this house that I've been in for more than 15 years now. And think about all the things that accumulate in the cupboards and the cracks and the closets and the things that we just don't need anymore, but because we have the space to put it, we put it there. And it's, I think we all are guilty of that to a certain extent, especially in the Western world where we have access to so much stuff. So to me, it's like, I've just felt this um, this big thing to clear out stuff and move furniture around. Okay, so here's what I wrote. So what I've had is I've had this desire to clear out stuff, and then I wrote down here, I need to listen to that. And so I've done a little bit this week where I've literally been moving stuff around and I have a couple of big bags that I'm going to take and donate this coming week. So I had this I had this thought drop in. I need to give away or discard 10 to 30% of my possessions. And that sounds big and that sounds massive, but honestly, I think about when my parents died, I think about when my husband's parents died, and there were massive amounts of things to go through, and it can be overwhelming. And I've really never wanted to leave that bit of a burden on my boys. So it's not like I'm going to get rid of things that might have meaning to them or things they might want but to me, the little stuff that accumulates because it's just too easy to do that. I feel so done with that. And that energy needs to clear out. And then I even think it can go so far as deleting or getting rid of things that we might think are sentimental. And and this might not resonate with you, but I don't know what it is about my personality, but I can cry at a sad commercial or a homecoming video of a soldier who comes home and surprises his wife or his kids, or, I can be very sentimental. But as far as holding on to stuff, I am not sentimental at all. So, this reminds me of that book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo, that came out, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, made an impact. I cleared a lot of stuff out. But the whole thing is you only hold on to things that bring you joy. So this is individual for each person. And so to me, that was, I'm like, okay, I need to level up this week because it feels really important for me, for my space, for clearing energy out. And I'm talking about physical stuff. And then rearrange my space and move furniture. So I think what happens when you rearrange a living room and you just change the way that the couch and the chairs or whatever, wherever things are sitting, it creates a new path for energy to flow. And this is really what I'm after right now. So then I wrote up this. There's something about that. This flowed into this, and it's directional movement. Okay, and I need to change up my routine massively. That's what I wrote. And then I wrote this: energy loves direction. Energy loves direction more than meaning. It loves direction. Like, think about that. Isn't that like a really cool way to look at energy? It loves direction more than meaning. Okay, so here's what I wrote about this. Walk only one way in the morning and one way in the evening. So I could go a completely different way to do my 5-mile walk. And that's just changing it up because I'm changing direction. I'm making energy move differently. Okay. And then this, because we all have multiple ways that we could go from our home to our jobs or our home to the store or wherever we're going. Okay. I wrote, always take the long way home, or at least for the short term being, while you're feeling this need for moving energy, always take the long way home, because then you're changing energy. You're effing around with the field in a good way, Okay. And then this change where I sit, sleep, or work every few days. There's a place that I sit in the kitchen when I get up and I have my tea, and the counter in our kitchen, there's kind of a bar that sits, and there's 6 chairs, and I have one chair that I've been sitting in for years. When I get up, I have my tea and I sit in this one chair. I open my laptop sometimes, almost every morning. I try to wait until I've been journaling first, but it's the same chair I sit in every day. So it's like, I need to change these things up. I need to move around. Okay. Now, what I think this does is this: it disrupts unconscious loops because I mean, I'm sure you've driven somewhere that you've driven 100,000 times, and you pull in and you're like, oh, I'm here. I don't even remember because we just run on this unconscious loop. So this disrupts it, and you start doing it with the little things, okay? And I think it also rewires your brain. That's what I wrote. So then I wrote this. Um, um, so draw shapes and not images. No, I actually brought something to show you because I think it's really interesting what happened in when 2020 hit and everything went into weirdness and lockdown, and people responded the way they responded, you know and we didn't there was the cutoff of human connection as far as the social events and all the stuff that just ground to a halt. And so I actually sat at my counter, and this was in the beginning of 2020, and I started just doodling. So I wanted to kind of show you because it's now been a couple years since I've done this, but I just started doodling. Okay, so look at this. And I just got a piece of paper and I got a Sharpie, and I just started drawing. I didn't erase. I mean, look at some of these. And they're just freestyle. They're just free. Oh, that's the same one. I made copies because I had a couple people who wanted to do this with them, color them. So then what I wrote is this: draw shapes and not images. These are just, I probably did, I don't know, 100 of these. I could probably put them together into a coloring book, which would be really fun. And then I wrote this: write but never reread. Okay, and I actually do this pretty often with my journaling. I'll write out, and then it's very rare I go back and I reread it. Build something that will be dismantled. So think about that. That's moving energy, like Legos and puzzles. So that might be like out of your comfort zone, but that is a movement of energy. Move to music that you don't like. I actually did that this week because that little thought came in because I love music and I love keeping the beat. In fact, many of you know I taught exercise classes for 40 years, and the beat and movement to the beat that's the way my brain is wired. And think about when we dance, when we go to a wedding. Maybe we're not a big dancer, but we can go dance at a wedding, and you know we're moving to the beat typically. But the goal is movement, that maybe put on music that you wouldn't normally put on. And maybe that's the whole message between that. And then I wrote this feels like creative force with no identity. Okay. So I'm not identifying with any of these things. Okay. Even the stuff I write in my journal, I don't get to make that my identity. That's why you write, but you don't go back and reread it. That's actually a really interesting exercise. So then I wrote this. Think about containment over expression. Okay. And here's what came in. This one feels really subtle, but it feels really powerful to me. Okay. Instead of expressing energy, contain it longer. It's like when you do breath work and you take a 4 count breath up and you hold it at the top. You contain it. You contain that energy. And then you basically hold it for as long as you can, and then you let a slow release, and you're containing energy. So then there's some other things that could go along with that besides the breath. Cold exposure, like cold plunges. You could go into moments of silence, which this has been really beautiful for me. I have been doing this for a while now, and some really deep, beautiful things come in when I am in just pure silence with just myself. Okay. And then this: make eye contact with nature, like trees and sky and the water, for extended periods of time. This one is cool because the energies in, I believe that everything is energy, but I believe that there's a living presence in Mother Nature and the trees and the flowers and all the stuff. There's a living presence and energy there. And because it just stays there, and think about a tree. I've shared this before, but I love to go around in my yard, especially when the spring hits and all the trees are starting to bud out, and they're so, and I will go around and I will talk to my trees, and I'll, put my hand on the trunk and I'll thank it for being so beautiful and for making my yard so creative. And there is something really beautiful about making eye contact with nature, things in nature. Think about that. That's actually a really cool exercise. This feels like it circulates energy and more powerfully. Okay, when you actually do that. Okay, to me that's really cool. Okay, so then I think what we have to do when we start doing these things is we can't second guess ourselves, because we're all here to play. We're here to play, experience, have fun, and flow with the energies that are available to us in these times. Like, this is what we have to remember. This is where we opt out of the noise and we get to flow with these beautiful energies. We just need to step up. We need to up our game. So here's what I've decided, because this is my super private self. Don't make announcements. Don't start a mission. Don't explain my state to others. Like, I don't feel like I have to explain where I'm at in my life, especially with my privacy, and especially with the things that I heal from. I internalize the emotions that I process. I don't feel like I have to explain myself to anybody. And this is where it can get a little bit tricky, because this is where feelings can get hurt. And that's never an intention. And what you realize, that's not on me. It's never my intention to hurt somebody, but someone might get their feelings hurt. So you don't have to explain the state of being to other people. That's a really nice place to land. And then I wrote this, because I think this is super important. Don't monetize or optimize this phase. All these things, this, especially the movement of energy, it can benefit every one of us, and it looks different for every one of us. I'm just sharing my perspective and my experience and the way I want to move energy. So I would say this is probably the very biggest thing for you to think on or journal on this week, is how could I change things up and move energy differently for me to affect where I am in my life? What resonates? Sit quietly and figure it out, and then get up and move. Okay. I'm no longer the observer. I've realized that this quiet timeline that I'm on is not passive. It's a beautiful, beautiful timeline. And it's so fascinating, the intense levels of growth that I feel like I'm getting. And they're all coming because of this deep sense of tuning into my own inner wisdom. It's really interesting to explain unless you start to experience this, because it feels like to some people that you might be pulling away from them. And that's not the case at all. To me, this is like, I'm getting all the answers, all the healing, everything I need from myself right now. And this is a time for me. Okay. Movement is no longer reactive. To me, it feels like it's massively intentional. Okay. And then the very last thing that came in, I'm going to probably expand on this coming week, because then this big word kept coming in all week: forgiveness, forgiveness, forgiveness. Because as I've tuned in to my own inner wisdom, my own inner self, and all the things that have come up, I sometimes have to ask myself, how can I forgive? There's, and I think we all experience this, such intense hurts, emotional hurts from whatever. It might be from your childhood. It might be from a bad job. It might be from a friendship or a relationship or situation, or you might just be feeling traumatized by what's happening in the world. All the things, right? And then I just kept saying to myself, okay, we know we forgive because it's for ourselves. You don't forgive for some. I mean, you do forgive someone that might have hurt you, for them too, but you forgive for yourself, and sometimes you might get hurt so deeply that you don't know how you can ever forgive. And that is something that I think takes continual work. It takes continual work. And then the very, very last thing I wrote, and I've been actually talking about this the whole time, is privacy and quiet healing. And I'll probably expand on that next week, because I feel like it's such a powerful place to land that it's worth exploring and sharing. So thank you guys so much for tuning in on this beautiful day in February. I hope that your week is amazing, and we will see you next time.